When you tell me that there's an adult horror book, which is basically a Michelin star creature feature buffet with some Lovecraftian horror, cosmic horror homages, and on top of that, a bunch of people being stranded out in the Bermuda Triangle, a pocket dimension of the ocean, which feels like Stephen King's The Mist meets the deep blue. I can't help but have a giant smile on my face, a smile as big as when I found out that Serena Vincent had acted in some adult films. Yo, 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 people and patrons of the night, it is your boy, the Horror Lander, and today I'm going to be talking about a horror novel that I had the pleasure of reading and had a very good time reading by one of my new up-and-coming favorite horror authors, which is none other than the book Dead Sea by Tim Curran. Tim Curran is one of my favorite up-and-coming horror authors. Well, he's not up-and-coming, he's well-established, but in my portfolio of who I like, I really enjoy his work from what I've read so far, because you can tell that he's very passionate about creature features, writing about scary abominations and monstrosities, slimy, scaly, tentacled, crazy things. He also loves Lovecraftian horror, and you see that throughout a bunch of his different works, especially in this book. And just overall, he writes really creepy, scary, and disturbing things with fantastic visuals and passion put behind it. So I got very excited when I found out that he had a book called The Dead Sea, which would be focused on ocean horror and being stranded out there, and hearing that it felt like Stephen King's The Mist, which is one of my favorite short stories by Stephen King, that being taken place in the middle of the ocean sounded fantastic. So I'll just give a little quick, brief plot synopsis and go over some of the things that I love about the book and then a few weaknesses, but it won't take too much away from how much I loved it. In short, the book is basically about this crew of sailors who are out on this giant cargo ship that's going to the French Guiana, where they're going to be participating in like a mining trip. So they have a bunch of different equipment on this cargo boat. They have barrels of gasoline and diesel, and they're all getting ready. You know, it's a rowdy group of people, a bunch of different personality guys, and things start going very, very bad when they hit the certain part of the Atlantic with a bunch of cross currents, and their navigational equipment starts failing, and they get stuck out in this giant thick fog and mist, mucus yellow and slimy, almost pulsating and wrapping around their boat. You can't see more than 3 feet in front of you, and it smells like a rotting corpse. It is disgusting. And next thing you know, one of the guys, an engineer on the boat, basically runs up to the deck and starts screaming. He has this giant bloody hole in his chest. Looks like he got stabbed by something. And he claims that something bit him. Something was biting him and trying to get inside of him. And he starts losing his mind and screaming his ears off. And then ends up going overboard off the boat into the fog. And a search crew is sent out for him on some lifeboats to try to find him. And they don't get far past the ship because they hear loud things splashing and moving through the water. Some eerie noises and sights and shadows out in the fog. And they see things with long necks and bright eyes looking back at them. And those guys get traumatized. So as they're trying to get their bearings and sort of rationalize what's going on, next thing you know, a derelict and abandoned giant freight ship out of nowhere, out of the blue, out of the mist, slams into their boat and causes the diesel fuel and gasoline to start exploding. And next thing you know, the ship goes up in flames. People are sent flying off of the ship. People go into a bunch of different life rafts and boats. And the remaining survivors are your sort of main characters and side characters who get broken off into different groups and are stranded out in this Dead Sea, this Bermuda Triangle, Sargasso Sea ocean of just absolute horrors and bad things awaiting for them. That now you get the whole perspective of them being stranded out there, and it is horrific, man. The sea is described as being pitch black. You can't see more than like 6 inches with the light through it, and it's completely calm, dead calm, tranquil waters, described as like looking at your pool in your backyard, which, considering you're out in the ocean, having a sea that is that dead, that quiet, that still is horrific. And again, this is a place where there's monstrosities lurking in the fog. There's aquatic leviathans and marine life from hell moving down beneath the water. And of course, navigational equipment does not work. You turn on the radio and you hear this strange type of static with fluctuations in it. It sounds like something is breathing and listening in on you, which they claim to be the fog devil. That's what they kind of give an urban legend name for it. And again, there's things bumping up against your life rafts, lifting you up out of the water 6 inches, what sounds like fingers tapping underneath your boats. You see weird shadows and shapes out in the fog, giant creatures that sounds like they're ripping apart people, smashing up other lifeboats. Horrific sounds like millions of locusts going off and tigers roaring through tunnels. It is horrific stuff. And there's plenty of creature feature action in this book. I'll give you 3 examples of the type of creature feature action you get. And if you think that's spoiler content, don't worry. There's like 18 different creature feature moments you get with some of the wildlife and things out in this ocean. So first, when they're actually on the ship, remember that guy who was screaming with the hole in his chest? So the first mate and captain and an engineer go down into the filtration tanker on the ship, which is this giant tanker with like murky water up to your waist. They pull out weeds and fish heads and things and dump it out of the filtration system. And when they're down there with lights and some hatchets and stuff, trying to seep through all the junk and see what may have bit him, they hear slimy things moving through the water. And next thing you know, they get encountered by a giant python-sized molted gray mutant marine worm as thick as a man's thigh with molted gray skin and hagfish slime coming through it, and a black mouth with a corkscrew tongue that is said to basically what is assumed to be drilled through your body and eat you from the inside out. So that is what they deal with on the ship. You also have one of the survivor groups out on a life raft, and he's basically using his oar to push away all this nasty yellowish green weed with the pink slime over it away from him, because the sea is kind of slimy. It's like a primordial stew with like a membrane over it of like icky slime, so that gets covered over stuff in your boat. And when he's pushing away these weeds, he flicks it away and sees something on the end of his oar, which is the size of a shoe. And it ends up being this disgusting black crustacean-like spider. It's got like dozens of legs. It's got a cluster of what looks like yellow grapes on top of its head, which are eyes with the membrane covering them. And as he takes his other oar and smacks this spider thing away, it makes a bird-like screech and then runs across the ocean surface like a water strider bug. It just scurries across the top of the water into the fog like a spider running across a tabletop, except it's on the surface of the ocean. So that is fuck no. That is fuck no. That is fuck all that noise. That is horrific, man. And my favorite creature feature encounter is when they go to the graveyard of ships, which is essentially an area where there's giant weed banks like small islands, and there is hundreds of ships and carriers and planes from different time periods who have got warped and trapped in this Bermuda Triangle Dead Sea area, derelicts and abandoned ghost aircraft and ships. So they find this C-130 Hercules military cargo plane and try to take station there, until they get attacked by a giant kraken squid monstrosity with tentacles that are hundreds of feet long. The cargo hull of the plane is open and tentacles start investigating and moving around, described to look like red pythons that are as thick as a man's waist. And there's heat sensors, like the pits of a pit viper on these tentacles, sort of figuring out where you are. And next thing you know, all the tentacles start coming in, grab the giant 90-foot C-130 cargo plane and try crushing it like a tin can. People start getting grabbed and pulled out, and these things got giant hooks. They got venom, which can basically almost instantly kill you. One swipe of a tentacle just completely de-skins and de-muscles a person. And it's got these giant, main predatory tentacles that squids have that have like clubs on the end, and there's like mouths inside of there and stuff, and it's really crazy. And one guy is described as getting grabbed and pulled into the mouth of this giant octoid monster squid. And the mouth, which is like out there and by the fog, because this thing's got, 100-foot long tentacles, so its actual big head and body are out there like, a station post. It's got a mouth the size of a train tunnel, and there's said to be like hundreds of tongues or beaks inside of its mouth that can basically de-skin you down to the bone in a matter of seconds. So horrific deaths come to some of these people. And again, it's a bioluminescent squid, so it even starts glowing in the fog and stuff, and it's really, really crazy. And again, if that sounds insane, keep in mind there's like 18 creature feature encounters. Some are big creatures in marine life, just like the squid. Some of them are smaller and more threatening, but everything out there at the Dead Sea is just can kill a person and is horrific in its own way. You also have one of the scariest scenes I've ever read, which is when these guys go on this abandoned World War I warship and read the diary logs of a woman that got driven into madness when she was stranded out in the Dead Sea on this ship in typical Lovecraft fashion. And it is horrific. It turns from like a ghost story, her descent into madness, to giant crawly things and women with babies that are not babies, and things with thousands of scurrying legs chasing after you through dark corridors. And as these guys on the ship are reading these logs, what is in the logs starts catching up to the modern age, and eventually they start experiencing real life, real-time horror involving those things. And that was hair-raising. My heart rate actually got pumped up from that, imagining myself in that situation. And just the writing was so effective and so crazy. It was fantastic. So one of the scariest scenes I ever read. And of course, there is Lovecraft cosmic horror, things that are so horrendous and incomprehensible abominations that people's brains start melting into stew and pouring out of their eyes and their face, and their skin starts melting off of their body, and their internal organs turn to liquid jelly. So much crazy stuff in this book, so many wild things, and the stuff I gave you is not even all of it. So it is a fantastic tale. It has weaknesses. The book gets repetitive at points, and it gets a little bit too ambitious and off track right before the climax finale. A little bit too many things going on. Maybe Tim Curran tried doing too much, but overall it was a very good read. So I give this book an 8.5 out of 10. If all the things I talked about with you seem to fascinate you, you should go check out this book. And apparently he has 2 novellas that follow this up as like prequels or something, called Dead Sea Chronicles, so I will check those out eventually. But that's all I got for today. If you guys enjoyed this review, you can support me by hitting that subscribe button, hitting that like button, and commenting down below. And that's all I got for today. So have a great day, have a blessed day, stay cool, stay classy. Let me know what you think about this book, if you've read it before or if you're interested in it. And yeah, I'll see you to the next time. Deuces.